early November, everybody starts. And then we've got college football, the college basketball, the NBA, the NHL, and the NFL all going on at the same time, which means I never sleep. And honestly, it means that Brendan Marks never sleeps from The Athletic. He joins us on the Adam Gold Show. You've been very busy, but now basketball season is here, so it's time for you to get to the day job. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to have been busy up until now. This was supposed to be my hibernation. This is not the typical arrangement of things.
So I think I've talked to you about this. Did you have a vacation planned where you were just going to go driving throughout New England, and then the editors found out about it and said, "Hey, would you do me a favor and go knock on this door in Nantucket?"
Trust me, if I had the option to just enjoy a Nantucket vacation and not do any door knocking or calling or anything, I've had enough doors slammed in my life, in my face for a lifetime. I certainly would not have opted for that, but that was a one-of-one experience. I don't know that I'll ever be assigned that sort of assignment again.
When Bill answered the door, was that the most awkward moment you have ever had in your life?
It's definitely up there. However, I will say this: I'm not sure who was more surprised, if it was him or if it was me. And because I called my wife right after, and she had the incredibly astute point. When do you think was the last time that Bill Belichick actually answered the door for a solicitor? So, I mean, he was as surprised to see me as I was to see him, and I mean, we fumbled. I'll be honest with you. I probably talked to him more in those 5 minutes on his front porch than I have since he's been the coach at North Carolina.
My God. Was he nice to you?
Yeah, pretty nice. He was not interested in small talk.
Sure.
I asked him how Chapel Hill was treating him, if he had any favorite, restaurants or places yet, gave him some recs. He was not interested in any of my information.
All right, let's get to basketball. Man, you hooked me on the article, so it's how good you are. Like no joke. It's how good you are that I devoured all of that in a time where I was adamantly opposed to any and all Jordan Hudson gossip. But you hooked me, Brendan Marks. All right, let's get to the hoops. Let's start with Carolina because obviously they've been watching Duke do Duke things for a couple of years. And now State looks like they are building something. I know it's early. It's year one. We haven't even played a game yet. But I have all the faith in the world that Will Wade's going to have a very good program over in Raleigh. What has been this type of transition? I think Carolina's got a dynamite roster. We saw Visar, throughout the NCAA tournament, dynamite player. Caleb Wilson, we know, is a very good player. They got good bones over there. So, what do you think about the Tar Heels?
Yeah, I am cautiously optimistic that this can be a top 25 team most of the season. I think, again, you look, like you mentioned, the pieces are there. And last year when you looked at North Carolina, you had questions about the front court, and they instantly materialized. You had questions about, the rebounding. You had questions about the interior scoring. You had questions about the defense, and they all materialized, and you just don't have those same questions. It's almost a complete role reversal where this year's team could be one of the biggest and best defensive teams in the ACC and possibly the country. I mean, in Henry Vesar, Caleb Wilson, and in theory you can put Jaron Stevenson at the 3, which I think North Carolina do for bouts this season. That's 6'9", 6'10", 7 feet with 7-foot wingspans across the board. All three of whom can switch out and guard on the perimeter. I mean, that is going to be one of the best defensive front courts in the entire nation. And again, if you look 2 seasons ago when North Carolina was a 1 seed and won the ACC regular season, it did it on the strength of its defense. So I think this team has top 10, top 15 defensive potential. If I have a question, my biggest one is I don't think there is an R.J. Davis on this team. I don't think there is a go-to scorer. I don't think there's a guy who's going to average 18, 19 points per game. Are you going to get consistent production from some of these other guys? I think, some nights it's going to be Seth Trimble. Some nights I think it's going to be Luka Bogovac, who I would not be surprised if he ends up being the best offensive player in this team. Some nights it's going to be Vesar. Some nights it's going to be Kyan Evans. Are you going to get enough a consistent scoring production from those guys to complement your defensive intensity. I think they will. You know, they spent like a top 25 team.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a top 25 team. I think it's a second weekend NCAA tournament team. And quite frankly, for Hubert Davis's sake, I almost think that's where North Carolina needs to make it to squall any questions about his future with the program.
Will they shoot it well enough?
I think so. Bogovac has, one of the prettiest shots that I've seen in college in quite some time. And I guess for a 22-year-old freshman, he should have a pretty nice shot. Kyan Evans, again, he can lace it up. I think Visar, he's not like a corner three-point shooter, but he certainly can elevate to the top of the key and knock some down. Jaron Stevenson has shown that that's in his potential. Derek Dixon, 6'5" freshman, has kind of flown under the radar a little bit. I think he could wind up being one of this team's best shooters. Jonathan Powell's an amazing shooter from West Virginia. It's going to be, how does Hubert Davis balance some of those perimeter minutes to make sure that he always has the offensive spacing he needs while not sacrificing what this team can be defensively.
Brendan Marks from The Athletic at Brendan R. Marks on Twitter. I know for most of the last several years you have covered both Carolina and Duke, and I'm going to get to Duke, but I am curious. We all saw Darian Williams in the NCAA tournament. We know how good of a player he is. State has a very good team had a very good team before they added Darian Williams to the roster. What does he specifically do for the Wolfpack? Because I said earlier, if somebody told me that State ended up winning the league, I would go, okay, because I think they have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions about NC State's rebounding, but I told Will Wade this a couple of weeks ago. He has made my job much more difficult because I am now going to have to consistently cover a third team in the triangle. I think NC State is going to be that good right off the bat. And again, they have the pieces where I'm expecting them the last 2 weeks of February going into the last week of March. I'm expecting them to be in the conversation for ACC champions. I think Duke and Louisville are still a tier above.
Right.
But then you look at North Carolina, you look at NC State, you look at Virginia. I would not at all be surprised if those five are jockeying for position the last 2-3 weeks of the season. And Darian Williams especially. I mean, he's an All-American caliber player. Mm-hmm. He just is. He does a little bit of everything, especially on this NC State roster, which doesn't necessarily have tremendous size on the front court. His ability to be a stretch four, somebody who you can score inside, but also obviously he can shoot it from deep. He can do a lot of things. He can handle the ball. He can rebound. He is going to be the do-everything guy for Will Wade in year one. And for NC State to land a player of that caliber in the first place, I mean, NC State beat out Kansas for a potential first-round pick who decided he wanted to come back to school. I hope NC State fans realize that is the new standard here with Will Wade. That is going to be, you have a yearly competitive team for as long as Will Wade is in Raleigh, in my opinion. I am 100% in on what they're selling. Have been fortunate enough to go over and see them a couple of times. The guy who nobody's talking about, who they need to be talking about, who I think could wind up being the best offensive player in that team is Paul McNeil.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has a breakout season coming. And again, like you said, Adam, if the last week of February you told me NC State's in second or third in the league with a chance to win it all, I wouldn't be surprised in the least.
Yeah, and part of it is that I think Will Wade is just that good as a coach. And by the way, Paul McNeil, the rare non-portal ad, he's a holdover. Holy cow, you can actually hang out at a program and get better and have an impact. All right, to Duke, are they deep enough? Because I know last year it looked like they had 11 players. Do they have 8 or 9 this year? What is your take on what Duke has in terms of their roster?
Yeah, to me, this is, another Final Four capable roster. I'm not going to say that it's as good as last year's team because, quite frankly, in my opinion, last year's Duke team was an all-timer. I mean, yeah. I think they were one of the 10 or 15 best teams we've seen in college basketball in the last, quarter century. I mean, I think they were I think that last year's Duke team is going to wind up being John Sire's version of 1999.
Yep.
The one that got away. However, Cam Boozer, Patrick Gongba, Malik Brown, I mean, that's as good a front court rotation as you're going to find in the country. I think Boozer's going to be not just ACC Player of the Year caliber good. I think he's got a strong chance to be All-American caliber good. Different kind of player than Cooper Flagg. He's bigger. I think you're going to see a lot more big-to-big and between him and Ngongba this year. But just a sensational all-around do-everything player who's been even better than Duke staff anticipated he'd be. On the wings, sort of pick and mix your poisons. You've got Isaiah Evans. You've got Darren Harris, who I think has probably been the biggest. I know you talk about a guy who's hung out of the program and gotten better.
Yeah.
Darren Harris is going to play this year. Nick Homenia comes in. He's a little bit bigger, but can still play at the 3, can do some things that Con Knipple did last year. Dame Sarr comes in. He's a crazy athlete. Like, you mix and match all those guys, I think you're in good shape. The real big question I have for Duke is, who is your lead guard? And what is the level of play you're getting from that spot consistently? Caleb Foster has had some really good moments in a Duke uniform. I thought he was fantastic in the Final Four against Houston. I thought he should have played a lot more in the second half than he did. Is he able to be that guy on a nightly basis? And that doesn't mean he's scoring 15 points a game. If he gives you 10 and 4 and 2, that might be all you need from him on a consistent basis to be a Final Four caliber team. What does Caden Boozer give you? How ready is he right off the gun? How much does his chemistry with his brother influence his playing time? That's my big question with Duke. But again, like, the top of college basketball overall is not going to be as good as last year. Any team that was in the Final Four last year would be, in my opinion, by far and away the front runner to win the chip this year. Duke is going to be in the mix. And if they can answer that lead guard question, I think they have a chance to rise up and become one of the favorites.
Can I ask this question? And granted, I have been sort of, immersed in hockey. I'm still coming off the Ryder Cup. I have a lot of things going on. I did not hear Isaiah Evans mentioned. Where are we with him?
That's an oversight on my part.
Okay,
he's going to be
you scared me.
He's going to be a huge piece of what Duke does. Listen, I will say,
Thank you.
That's totally on me. On me. He is going to be a huge piece of what Duke does. The thing that I think I want to see out of him, and right, like, if I ask you, what is Duke's identity under John Shire? And you've seen now 3 years of teams. You've seen Derek Lively. You've seen Malawat.
Yeah, defense.
It's defense. And Isaiah Evans and defense are not always two words that I think, came first to mind together last year. I think he made strides as the season went on, major strides. His body, he's worked on it. He's still slim, but he has put on the muscle that he needed to this summer. Can you get him to buy in on that defensive end consistently? Because he offensively, there's no reason he can't be one of the leading scorers on this team, one of the leading three-point shooters in the country. I mean, if you go back and you look, statistically, if he had played enough minutes to qualify, he would have been a top 10 high major three-point shooter last year. He is that electric. Defensively, he has to be up to the task, though, to warrant the playing time that he is going to have. I have no questions about his effectiveness or whatsoever, but for Duke to maintain that defensive culture that it has with Shire through his first 3 seasons, Evans is going to have to take a leap on that end to match his defense with his offense.
And I would also like to see him be more than just a shooter. I think throughout the season he was more apt to just get the ball, pull the trigger, than he was to add other elements to his game, because I think he can be a slasher and I think he can be a creator. But you're right about the defensive part. I was just wondering if I had missed an injury or something, because, again, I've been immersed in a lot of other things. Brendan Marks, final thing for you, and I appreciate this is going to be one question about the current, I'll use a Yiddish word, surus going on over the tumult going on in Chapel Hill. Because I don't think it's a must-win for the Tar Heels this week, Friday night. I think it's a must play well. I think they can quell a lot of issues by simply looking like they're a competitive, competent outfit, even if they don't win at Cal, because Cal's good.
Yeah, I think where I land, I don't disagree with you. I think they need to play well. I think they need to play hard. The thing that has kind of defined these losses to me, obviously the scope and the final score gets to you, but as much as anything, it's the way things avalanche. The end of the second quarter against TCU,
yes.
First play after halftime. You talk about those first couple of minutes, 4 35-yard plays in the first quarter against Clemson. The avalanche, where in 4 or 5 minutes the team goes from, okay, we're competitive to this game is over, and we look mentally checked out. That's what can't happen. So I think that's important. But look, I keep trying to sing this from the mountaintops. The money and the egos in play in Chapel Hill do not make it viable for North Carolina to move on from Bill Belichick anytime sooner than the end of the year, and that would still cost North Carolina $30 million, which would be the largest buyout that has ever been paid in the state of North Carolina. Fans might not want to hear that. UNC is committed to this. Bill Belichick, I will say this, for all the things that have swirled in reports and everything, I do think that he enjoys college coaching, and the players and coaches who we've spoken to who are around him say that in terms of actually teaching football, it is there. The question for me is, can you bridge the gap with the motivation? Can you get guys to play hard? Can you get them to care about you and the program? Those are the things that I think are going to be on display against Cal. Again, I don't think it's going to be a must-win. I don't know how many wins are left on the schedule for North Carolina,
right,
even considering how soft the schedule is. But in order to convince people, especially on the heels of a bye and all of the headlines and the drip of the last 2 weeks,
right,
you do have to come out, play hard, like you said, look competitive. And if another one of those avalanches happens where they go from, down 7 to down 28 in 5 minutes, that I think is where, all the stuff that's come out in the last 2 weeks, it's just going to continue to snowball.
Brendan Marks, you and I are in alignment about this year. I don't think anybody wants to pull the plug. I think Bill's reputation in some ways is kind of on the line here. I think he's planning on this being not just this year, but next year and the year after. I think he's planning on that because I think he is invested in it, even though it doesn't necessarily look like it to some people. And I agree that the egos involved at the university are not about to let this go, and they don't want to part with $30 million for somebody to not coach. This is not Penn State. Brendan R. Marks on Twitter. You do an awesome job, sir. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. We're less than 3 weeks away from everything really mattering in hoops. Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me as always.
You got it. Brendan Marks, absolutely phenomenal. All right.